know me, even though I wrote a best-selling book on running, with most people I need something to jog their memory. So I carry the American Express card. It's the only card with hundreds of travel offices all around the world to help you if you're lost, need traveler's checks, or emergency money. It's nice to know that if you ever run into trouble, you've got a place to run into.
To apply for a card, look for this display wherever the card is welcome.
Running is a sport that I hold very close to my heart, as all throughout high school I ran and continue to run for recreation today. There is something to be said about the adrenaline rush and the addictive properties of running that just can't quite be emulated by any other sport. While not everyone's thing, understandably so, because of its intense strain on the mind and body, many people find their lifestyles improved and fuller with it. However, in the cases mentioned here, those passionate, lively, and active souls would meet an abrupt end. From overexerting oneself from doing something one enjoys, to being subjected to unfortunate circumstances outside of one's control, or maybe even a combination of both. Here are some of the most tragic deaths suffered by runners.
Now that you know a little bit about how your body reacts to running, let's begin.
Perhaps one of the most famous runner deaths. Jim Fixx was born on April 23, 1932 in New York City, New York, and would go on to become one of the most recognized personalities in running, even writing a book entitled The Complete Book of Running in 1977, among others that spanned from running information to topics of intellect. He was often recognized for pushing the popularity of the sport and educating others on the healthy habits and benefits involved with it. His popularity grew exponentially as people supposedly stopped him on the street asking him for autographs. He would also star in commercials and programs, as well as being referenced in the Washington Post, which stated that by now, Jim Fixx's legs are almost as famous as Betty Grable's were during World War II, obviously poking fun at Fixx's book cover.
It's very important, particularly if you're over 35 or so, to see a doctor first. Tell your doctor you plan to start running and ask him or her to give you a checkup. If you're under 35, there's a very simple test that you can perform on yourself. It only takes an hour. Go out and walk very briskly, striding along, swinging your arms for a full hour. If you don't feel any shortness of breath, dizziness, chest pains, anything of that sort, then it's probably quite safe to start running.
Given his fame and knowledge, it's evident that he was an expert in his field and had all of the right attributes and mindsets to live a healthy life and share it with others. He was often considered one of the most interesting celebrities around for the 60s, 70s, and 80s, but unfortunately, that's where his story would end.
He has determined from his researches that if you run 20 miles a week, divided up any way you like it from day to day, you will improve your health markedly. And in particular, you will reduce your chances of having a heart attack by some 64%.
On an early but long morning in late July of 1984, a motorcyclist would notice something on the road on Route 15 in Hardwick, Vermont. It was Jim Fixx, lifeless, alone, and only dressed in running shorts, aged 52. At the time, Fixx was staying at a nearby hotel while he was waiting to move into a summer home on Caspian Lake. The owner of the hotel recognized him and was able to identify the body. According to some accounts, passerby tried to resuscitate him, but to no avail.
The heart has been beating. Or, simpler and cheaper, you can simply check your pulse at your neck here, where it's very easy to feel, look at your watch, count the pulse beats for 10 seconds, and multiply by 6. Now I think we're ready to go running.
According to his autopsy report, the cause of death was determined to be a heart attack caused by large blockages to his coronary arteries. According to Kitty Fixx Bauer, Fixx's sister, he was aware of the risks and signs as he knew that their father suffered from the same fate at the age of just 43. But according to her, this didn't pose much of a threat to Jim, as she states. There's an irony in this, no doubt about it, but he had no indication that he ought to check in with his friendly cardiologist. Evidently, cardiovascular problems were genetic, and Fixx was at least aware. But the most heartbreaking part about this is that there was no real sign of an issue until it was too late. A man died doing what he loved to do, alone on a solitary run that was most likely second nature to him. But lurking around the corner was a grim and abrupt end. Fortunately, his legacy does carry on to this day, with more generations of runners sprouting and the sport gaining in popularity. Our next story takes us far across the pond, all the way to Australia. Born on March 30th, 1972, and based in Ballarat, Victoria, Australia, Samantha Murphy was a beloved 51-year-old mother of 3 who touched the hearts of many in her close-knit community. She left to go for a run alone at around 7 a.m. on February 4th, 2024, and while normally this would prove to be a relaxing and rejuvenating hobby for Murphy, it wasn't all that lucky. And this ongoing case unfortunately still puzzles people to this day. However, despite this case being so elusive, there is some evidence that was left behind. While police were out searching for her remains, they came across what appeared to be her phone. It was found in a dam about 5 kilometers away from where her phone pinged when she disappeared. This was later confirmed by her husband, Mick, that it did in fact belong to her. Not only that, but the phone was inside of a wallet case that also had some of her other personal cards and belongings. However, despite discovering this, the police refused to state that it was in fact hers until further testing was done. There is also some concern about whether or not the phone could have evidence on it, and whether or not it could be restored. However, given that supposedly it was left to the elements for upwards of 100 days, it's hard to speculate.
After a major development in the investigation, 7 News can reveal the mobile phone found last week is operational, and police are in the process of accessing the data they hope will solve the case. Cassie Zervos has the exclusive details.
Samantha Murphy's mobile phone is the key clue detectives have in a case that's captivated the country. Now, 5 days after finding the 51-year-old's iPhone, 7 News can reveal it hasn't been damaged and is in a near-perfect working condition.
Regardless of this dire mystery, a suspect has been accused and taken into custody. A 23-year-old man named Patrick Stevenson. The reason he is suspected is because allegedly there's a great heap of CCTV footage that seemingly came out of nowhere, pinning all of the blame on him. He has since been charged with the alleged murder of Murphy, but it's important to note that the police still haven't recovered the woman's body.
His alleged killer has admitted he was drunk and high on ecstasy when he crashed his motorbike months before the Ballarat mum vanished. The court heard he was already on a probationary licence for similar offending when he hit the road after a grand final bender. Court reporter Amber Johnston.
He's the son of a former AFL player who's accused of one of Victoria's most baffling murders. Patrick Stevenson vehemently denies any involvement in the death of Ballarat mum Samantha Murphy, but today the 24-year-old admitted to an unrelated crime just months before her disappearance. It was grand final day in 2023 when Collingwood celebrated its breakthrough victory. Stevenson was having his own celebration at a party fuelled by drugs and alcohol when he got on his motorbike and crashed on Armstrong Street South in Ballarat. Police had difficulty communicating with him due to his intoxicated state. His blood alcohol reading was almost 3 times the legal limit and he was high on MDMA. Magistrate Guillaume Balin said it's luck alone that no one else was injured or killed.
This case is incredibly dire and heartbreaking, as the members of her family are left without any sort of closure, and I can only hope that somehow they get some type of solace soon. While the police are constantly looking to find out more, a lot of their obstacles with the search come from the geography of the location she frequented. Needless to say, the community was left in a shock after finding out about the news, and the entire outlook on running has shifted. However, that doesn't stop people from running in her honor. According to dailymail.co.uk, nearly 100 individuals lined up to complete the 7K that Murphy herself had planned to run, letting it be known that the unity that was evoked by this tragedy is one of the very few positives that could somehow come out of it.
A mother, a sister, a school mum, and someone just going out for a run.
Before more than 80 runners set off at 7 a.m, the same time on a Sunday morning that Ballarat mother Samantha Murphy left on what was to be her last run.
It was great to have an event to show strength in numbers. We're not afraid. We're still going to continue to walk and jog. And today was maybe even a little bit of a line in the sand moment. We want to not live in fear in our local communities.
As a runner, seeing what happened with Samantha impacted on me, and it was just something that I wanted to do to remember her.
The runners gathered in Bacchus Marsh, sticking together to create a safe space for 7 kilometres. The same distance it's believed Ms Murphy didn't get to complete.
Before moving on to our next entries, I wanted to list some ways to be a safer runner, because as previously mentioned, I do participate in the sport and want to help raise awareness for these types of dangers. Know your limits and listen to your body. Drink water, eat, and don't go out when it's extremely hot. Tell people where you are going and for how long. Even if there is no imminent danger, a trip or fall could prove devastating if the path is unsafe. Tell them what route you're taking. Stay vigilant about your surroundings. Try to go in groups. Make sure your phone is accessible. Switch up your route. And my own personal rule: if the vibe is off, call it off. Breaking and holding a world record is one of the very few feats that many talented individuals fail to achieve. In the realm of athleticism, no one is a stranger to that push and will to keep going and break limits. However, unlike the previous people on this list, a runner's fate wouldn't be met while they were doing the thing they were notorious for. Instead, something more sudden and unpredictable lie in wait. It's no surprise that with the invention of the automobile, there have been a significant number of vehicular-related tragedies. Even if all the correct precautions are taken, another driver on the road could not be paying attention, resulting in injuries or a tragic loss of life. In his case, Kelvin Kiptum would unfortunately see the end this way. Born December 2nd, 1999, Kelvin Kiptum was a 24-year-old Kenyan long-distance runner, highly renowned for his marathon world record of 2 hours and 35 seconds for a full 26.2-mile men's race in 2023. Unfortunately, not even a full year later, Kiptum and his coach, Gervais Hakizimana, would both face a tragedy that no one could have predicted. On February 11th, 2024, Kelvin was driving a Toyota Premio in the town of Eldoret, in the Rift Valley region of Kenya. Despite the two dying in the crash, there was a third person in the car, Cheptegei, who survived the crash and gave her personal account to police. She told police that it seemed as though he panicked when he saw another driver on the road late at night and veered out of the way, which resulted in the car hitting a tree. Just seeing the images of the car after the crash, there is no doubt that this event was catastrophic, as was also reiterated by his injuries. According to reports, he suffered skull fractures, lung contusions, and fractures to both sides of his ribs. As for his state behind the wheel leading up to the crash, it seems as though he was just exhausted and stressed from being on the road, as at the time of writing, I haven't found any hard and fast evidence of any substances used in any sort of toxicology reports.
Kiptum has died. Kiptum was the first man to run a marathon in under 2 hours 1 minute in an official race. At the age of 23, he finished the 2023 Chicago Marathon with a time of just 2 hours and 35 seconds. He completed his first marathon at just 13 years old and made his debut on the international scene with the Lisbon Half Marathon in 2019. Kiptum proudly displayed the flag of his home country, Kenya, after winning his races. He was expected to be a top contender, representing Kenya at the Paris 2024 Olympic Games.
Unsurprisingly, this shocking disaster struck the hearts of everyone in the running community, as hundreds of people joined together in grief to honor the young athlete and his mentor. This awful occurrence serves as a reminder to constantly practice defensive driving and to take every precaution necessary to drive as safely as possible. Be on the lookout, don't drive when you're tired, don't text and drive, always buckle up, and never, ever drink and drive. The Olympics are one of the most anticipated events in many athletes' lives. The world's countries unify together in sportsmanship and band together for one of the most anticipated televised sporting events, as athletes from all over get to show what they've been training for in the hopes that they will take home the gold. Not to mention one of the most notable traditions being that of carrying the Olympic torch to symbolize unity and love. However, for this athlete, her abrupt end was met not at the Games, but back at her home, in Kenya. Rebecca Cheptegei was a Ugandan Olympic marathon runner born in 1991 on February 2nd, making her just 33 at the time of her death, representing Uganda in the Paris Summer Olympics in 2024, and finished in 44th place in the women's marathon. Her community would often refer to her as a champion. She was a young athlete with an obvious drive to get more out of the sport in the future. Sadly, on September 1st of 2024, in her Kenyan home, she would be set on fire by her ex-boyfriend, Dixon Dima Marangak, who got into an argument with her over a piece of property. According to reports, she was targeted when she was at home with her daughters after church, in which, following her death, the pastor recounted remembering a wonderful, God-fearing person. Dixon set her alight and ended up giving Cheptegei burns on 80% of her body. During the attack, Dixon also ended up burning himself and dying as a result. On September 5th, 2024, Cheptegei would die in the hospital, leaving her daughters without a mother and her parents with a hole in their hearts. Her father said that he lost a very supportive daughter, and her mother stated that she was a good child, very polite. She didn't have any issues. Perhaps one of the most heartbreaking things about this case was her experience in the hospital and her phone call with the pastor after she heard the news. Rebecca asked about her children first, who were both safe. Then she went on to recount her experience with Dixon, stating, "You mean Dixon is not able to see all I have done for him? He could not remember even 1 or 2 things I have done for him and stop setting me on fire? Why has he done this to me?" This tragedy highlights a very prominent issue that is all too common in Kenya, that of misogyny and consequently femicide. The reason for a lot of this is because many Kenyan women who participate in sports break traditional gender molds. Women who are athletes are becoming more independent themselves, as well as being more financially independent, and as a result are becoming increasingly vulnerable to attacks of this nature. Her legacy still lives on through the hearts of people she touched through her talent, and she will not be forgotten.